Hello there! My name is Brent, and this is the former mining town of Cerro Gordo. And back in the 1800s, they pulled $500 million worth of minerals out of these hills behind me, and 4,000 people call this place home. I've been living up here since March of 2020, trying to bring life back to the place. I spend my days exploring old mines, restoring some of the old buildings, going on hikes, dirt bike rides, and a lot more. And in this past month, we've made a lot of progress. We've built a hotel, we've made some silver, and a whole bunch more. Let's check it all out. All right, so 3.5 years. That is how long I have been living here at Cerro Gordo. I remember early on, I would put up how many months I've been living here in my hands. So 6 months, 10 months, 15 months, much in a way that parents describe how old their child is, but 3.5 years. And I have seen a lot. There has been fires, there has been floods, there's been blizzards, there's been windstorms. And I feel like over the past 3.5 years, I've packed more living into that time frame than the rest of my life combined. And I feel very grateful to be able to share all of it. Over the past 3 years, this bench that I'm sitting on has kind of become my confessional. I've been able to sit here, pour out the highs, pour out the lows, and hear from people from all over the world. I also say that this month, the 3.5 years in month, was the same. I had to develop all sorts of new skills. I had to use skills that I've developed before. I've had to work with all sorts of new people. And through all of that, I just feel an overwhelming sense of gratitude, that this town is coming back to life. The vision is working. With all that, let's check out what's been going on this last month or so and see what Cerro Gordo has become. A big update in the last month or so is this, the American Hotel, which is finally starting to look a little bit like a hotel. Earlier this year we had a half-built wall that needed to be filled with concrete, and I thought we were gonna be at that forever, but now, if we head on in, you can see the American Hotel. That will be the poker room, where we'll have some poker tables. The bar that we got from Austin, the Brunswick bar, is gonna go along this wall over here. There'll be a large deck out here for everybody to sit at with an amazing view, if I do say so myself. Over here, step up here, this is the beginning of the second floor. So the decking is down for the second floor. This will be the rooms, all of which will have beautiful views of Owens Valley, hopefully Owens Lake. But it has been quite the journey to get here. I look around and I see the tank, and I remember all that had to go into doing that. The concrete below me, all that had to go into bringing up the blocks, mixing the concrete with Dave Sparks. And we're not even close to being done yet. But I think that already, these walls could tell thousands of stories, and I am just stoked. I just have to say, thank you so much to everybody watching this video. You guys are the reasons that this thing is coming back to life. I hope that many of you can come up here one day, enjoy a meal here in the hotel, look out there, enjoy the view, and stay tuned because we do have to get all of this enclosed by the winter. So we're still very much under the gun, but it is starting to look like a building, and let's hope that we can get the rest of what we need done so that way this thing is safe come winter time. So now that the hotel is looking a little bit like, a building, I've allowed myself just to get excited, to dream a little bit about the furnishings that we're gonna have all around here. But the other big thing that I want to be a staple of the new hotel is music. Haley's working on a recording studio in the old Hunter's cabin just over there. We hope to have monthly concerts here in the hotel. And so for that, we need a couple pianos. And this month, I was offered a piano that ended up making its way over here. All right, I am off on an adventure. We are being offered an 1800s grand piano from the Laws Museum, which is a museum up in Bishop that is established for the old railroad that came all the way down to Keeler. This thing weighs something like 800 pounds. It's gonna need a little bit of work. I am a little bit late getting down there, so I'm gonna pack up, we're gonna hit the road, and let's go get at a piano for the hotel. Pianos are interesting. They hold this sentimental value in everybody's mind, and people love them until it comes time to move. When it comes time to move, they realize they haven't played this thing in years, they don't really want it, but it's too important in the American psyche to just throw into the dump. And so the Laws Museum had that exact problem. They had a piano there from 1875, a grand no piano that originally started in Lexington, Missouri. It went to Kansas City, it went back to Lexington, it made its way all the way to California, and it has this amazing storied history to it, and they were gonna throw it away. And to me, that was just not cool. So I got the call, loaded up the trailer, made my way up to Laws, and we're gonna stay in this piano and bring it back here to Cerro Gordo. All right, we're here at Laws, and Laws is a former railroad station along the Carson, Colorado. That might look very similar to the one in Keeler, if you remember. And we're here to get a piano from in here. This is how we're hoping to get the piano home. And so let's go in and get a piano. Our piano expedition is continuing. It has made it this far to Keeler just fine. Now is the final test. Now this piano on its trek has to make it one more road all the way up there to Cerro Gordo, which is 8 miles up a dirt road, which hopefully will be its kind of forever home. And there it is. The piano has made it to Cerro Gordo. As the months go on, I hope to keep adding unique pieces into here that are going to bring you back into the 1800s and just make this place feel alive and historic. So following up on my last video, progress has continued in converting the 900-foot level into a base camp of sorts. And why do I want to create a base camp 900 feet underground? Because I have recently been made aware that the 900-foot level of this mine is not the lowest level. There's in fact 5 additional levels below the 900-foot level. We're talking miles of mines. A mine that goes down to a 1290 level. So think about 390 more feet below the current level. And so when I think about that big a drop, 390 feet, they're not bringing ore up ladders at 390 feet. There must be some other type of hoist system, like a cage you see behind me, some big machinery that's back there. And so that's enough to drive me to try to create a place to live for not just a few days, but maybe even a few weeks, 900 feet underground. And obviously that's a big task. The last time I went down here a couple weeks ago, I took rope all the way down to the 900-foot level, and comparing some 3D mapping I did to some USGS reports from the 60s, I was able to determine where these shafts down should be. And unfortunately these days, both of those directions are collapsed. But that's not gonna deter me. I've dug through collapses before, and so the first step of creating an area where I could go down there and stay for a long time would be to bring power down there. Today, my friend Craig came up, and with the help of my other friends Tim and Phil to operate the hoist, we were able to go down and bring power all the way down to the 900-foot level.
We're gonna take, I'm gonna take 2 circuits. We're gonna use Romex to go down. Just basic lighting. An outlet that we can plug in when we're down there, and we can have some more lighting or tools or whatever we need. Also going to take comm cable, and we're going to try and wire up the old school apartment intercom system so we can do a little bit of work down there today.
Gotta bring it. It's a pretty relatively straightforward task. We got some rolls of Romex. We got some staples, and the plan was to kind of slowly go down, stapling our way down, staple the Romex all the way down on each of the 5 existing levels. So we were gonna put an outlet, we were gonna put a switch, and we were gonna put a light. That was the plan, and it all went relatively smooth until we lost communication around the 400 level. We lost our radio, so we're using light. All right. Here we go. 1, 2. Our walkie-talkies were no longer working, so we had to resort to a flashing of light system. 1 is stop, 2 is down, 3 is up kind of situation. Doesn't always work. Sometimes it's hard to tell how many lights are being flashed when you're 900 feet underground, but it got us where we needed to go. We were able to get down to the 900-foot level. We were able to put in some power there. The next step is to put in communications. We obviously at least want an intercom system so we don't lose communications in the future. We're also exploring around with the idea of bringing internet down there. I think I'm mixed on that. I'd like to hear your opinion. I think 1, it'd be very cool. It would allow me to truthfully be down there for many days at a time. But 2, part of the reason I love going to these mines is because I am shut out of access from the outside world, and that would kind of get ruined with this development. But again, 5 more levels of the Union Mine, unexplored by anybody living. If I need power, if I need electricity, if I need internet, we're gonna bring whatever we need down there to make it comfortable, to make it sustainable over the long run. And so for now, that project's continuing. Stay tuned, this is a very exciting one. It's probably one that I'm most excited about of any. And soon, we will be having a number of people living down there for a number of days and getting in to these historic levels that nobody's seen for a very long time. If you're gonna own a silver mine, it's pretty important to know how to refine some silver. This is something that, strangely, I did not think about until about 2 years ago when it suddenly consumed me that I had no idea how to refine silver. And so at that time, I went down to the mine and I pulled out 100 pounds of galena. And galena is the raw ore. That's the lead, silver, and some other minerals within it that they were mainly looking for here at Cerro Gordo. And so I took out 100 pounds, flew up to Washington, where my friend Jason from Mount Baker Mining taught me how to go through the process of taking raw ore down to silver. We started with 100 pounds of ore. I think in the end we ended up with about 4 ounces of silver, but it was amazing. You know, it was just so revealing, so humbling really, to go through that process of seeing ore go from the wall of a mine all the way down into something that most of us probably take for granted every day. And so this month I was thinking about a special gift for a special somebody, and I was thinking about some piece of jewelry. And again, I thought, hey, I own a silver mine. I know that there's minerals down there. I'm on a big rock hounding kick. Why not go through the process again of creating silver, getting some of these new minerals, insetting the mineral into the silver, and creating something beautiful. And the first step in the process, if you're gonna create anything silver, is to get galena. But most of it is gone. You know, the miners are pretty good at taking out the different pockets that they could, but there are some pockets of this galena. And so the first step is to go get it. All right, back at the 400 level, and we are headed to go get some galena. Let's get some silver. So the last time that I made some big batch of silver, we took 100 pounds of the galena that ended up making, I think, 3 or 4, maybe a little bit more ounces of silver. This time I only need an ounce. So I'm thinking if I can get 30 pounds or so, you know, a backpack worth of galena, that'll be good. That'll give me enough to refine it all the way down, make some cool silver, move on with it. All right, back to the next step is to go down that. Look at that, 71. That'd be 1871. Pretty cool. Now, the transition into this ore box. And go to the bottom of that, and down there there's gonna be a ledge, and that is where our galena is. And you want to talk about appreciating the things that we take for granted. This ore chute is beautifully timbered, perfect square, where it's difficult even to crawl around to move your body, much less construct this beautiful box that you have to crawl down to get to the ledge. And now after all that, what we're here for, that is galena. So we're gonna take it right out of this wall. You're gonna see it go from this, condense down to pure silver, and then into a ring. We're gonna have plenty down here to get our 30 pounds that we need. Success. We have the beginnings of what will become silver and the beginnings of what will become a ring. Let's get out of here. All right, the bounty is successfully back on the surface. Let's take this outside and see what we were working with. Unfortunately, galena itself is pretty useless when it comes to any type of jewelry or anything like that. So what we need to do is we need to go from galena down to pure silver. So to do that, you introduce the flux, which in this case is soda ash. You heat it up, you pour it into a cone mold, and then after that, you knock off the slag and you're left with a perfect pyramid of both lead and silver. I think that becoming a rock hound is a natural evolution of anybody that lives in the desert long enough. The next evolution is bottle art. So if I start getting into bottle art, somebody call me out, please. I came across the prettiest thing I've seen in the mine yet. You know, I've been in these mines for days at a time, for hours at a time, and I have never seen purple the whole time I was down there. And so when I was down there, I just came across this entire wall of purple inside of white quartz. You know, all minerals look cooler when you're underground. They just look more alive. But this, even coming back up, it just looks amazing. So once I got my purple and my blue rock, I was able to go down to the Gem and Mineral Society. And the Gem and Mineral Society in Lone Pine is just an amazing organization. You know, it's a collection of humans that just love gems and minerals and are just so willing to impart any knowledge that they might have to you. And they also have an amazing lapidary shop. You know, you can go in there and there's saws this big, there's saws this big, there's saws this big, there's all sorts of grinding wheels. And so I was able to go down there and just spend the evening, you know, taking my large piece, isolating a little bit that I eventually wanted to polish up, carving it slowly down, polishing it. And I think while you're there, there's just something very meditative about taking a rock down, you know, almost letting the rock tell you what shape it should become. I'm getting down there, I have this now, and now we're onto the wheel. So I'm just slowly getting that down. All right, so I'm gonna cut this purple rock again. And I wanna get it down to where I can polish some of that up. So we're gonna do one more cut on this thing, and then we're gonna go from there. All right, now you can see that I cut up the purple stuff a decent amount. So we have this really pretty dark purple in there that I'm gonna try to get to and polish up. You know, there's another piece over here that this is pretty nice to take out. This has some pretty stuff in it. But what I wanna try to focus on, I think, is this really dark purple right in the middle of this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this over to the smaller saw and we're gonna cut this down to size. Very grateful to the Gem and Mineral Society for allowing me to be in here and learning a new hobby. All right, folks, first night, I got that out of the purple stuff. Got this out of the Smithsonite. Got this guy too. Looks pretty sweet. I think I can make some of this into some jewelry. And so in the end of that, I was left with about 3 little gems that I polished up pretty good and a variety of sample ones. And I think as a small thank you, I want to give some of those away. There's no cost to enter. Check below, there's gonna be a link. You know, just click on that. You'll be free to enter. Hopefully these find good homes. You know, I think that I got so excited from that trip down there this time using all the lapidary tools that I started building a little lapidary shop for myself. Yeah, the next hobby that I think I'm gonna undertake in a very serious manner here at Cerro Gordo. Another thread that's continued over the last month or so is searching for human remains. Just over a month ago, I met Paul and Bosco. Paul and his dog Bosco are just world-renowned for their human remains detection. The fact is that not a single headstone here mentions who's below it. And so with Paul, I was hoping to first determine the borders of a cemetery that I know that exists. On the hill on the far side of the town, back here on the backside of Cerro Gordo, which used to be called New Town, or this is Chinatown, where a lot of the Chinese workers worked, we found a few more people, including 2 people to either side of this cabin that I'm sitting at right now. This cabin is one of the first cabins that I stayed at here at Cerro Gordo. It was one of my first projects, was building this deck that I'm sitting on right now. And this I always referred to as kind of the writer's cabin. I saw it as a hideaway, a retreat from everything. But now, knowing that there are human remains on either side of this cabin brings a little bit different light to the whole experience in this cabin. And last time Paul was here, Bosco immediately detected right over here about 10 or 15 feet away in this weird mound, and as well as over here in front of what used to be an active mine. And I remember after Paul left, a few hours later, he sent me a message and he was like, you know, something isn't sitting right about the burial sites by this cabin. You know, they're too close to the cabin. You wouldn't bury somebody right next to your cabin because it's gonna smell. The method of which they're buried as well, just kind of pushing dirt over them, isn't a method that would have been done traditionally. And so it was his inkling that there was foul play involved in some type. Hearing Paul's suspicion about these burial sites seemed good enough reason to bring Paul and Bosco back up here. So that's what they did this month.
Okay, so we've been here last time and we got good alerts from Bosco on right about where that bush is, right that pile of dirt is, and over there where it goes in the mine. To me, it looks like a hasty burial. And the fact that it's like a couple of feet from the house, who puts a body next to their house? So I think there's a good chance that 2 people were murdered here. you know, the bad guys came in, did that, killed them, and then, you know, took whatever they were. It'd be interesting, you know, how long this place has been here. I mean, I've seen a lot of graves.
Yeah.
And I didn't ever see anything like this. Nails sticking up right by the point. Okay, here you go. Well, I think that's pretty close to last time, right?
Yeah, it was right in this area.
Yeah, right. Oh, you smell it. So they recently dug this out, so now we have all this human decomposition dirt right through here. So he's just going blink, 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 blink all the way out.
Right.
Let's go to work. It looks like we got about 15, you think, in here. So this may be the cemetery for the Asian people, the Chinese people right here.
Yeah.
It looks like it's about, probably 5 yards between each one.
Sure.
I'd like to go over to the two little pine trees, because that's got a story.
Yeah, that's a cool one. Okay.
That's got a story.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah.
So the story behind this site is these trees are like 3 in a row, and it's just like someone put them there for someone special. It really seems that way.
Paul brought up that there are ways to determine who these people were. You could identify them due to the DNA, but obviously that means retrieving some of the DNA, which is just a can of worms that I don't think that I want to open. You know, I think I've been pretty good with the spirits here at Cerro Gordo. I feel that something about that might get me on the wrong side, but I'm curious what you guys think. You know, it is an option. There could be an argument that this is giving them a name, this is giving them a space, this is giving them recognition, but there's also the argument that you're disturbing the past. So I'm curious what all of you guys think, but something I've been thinking about a lot over the last few days. Paul and Bosco do plan on coming back up here again. We want to do a couple more explorations around the buildings and continue looking on this backside of the property to see what we could find. But let me know. You know, let me know what you think about this. Let me know what you think about the kind of contrast of giving these people a specific name or just giving them their space. All of the adventures of this last month have been fueled by Element. Element is just my safety net for hydration. You know, when you're moving around, especially when the temperatures are hitting 100 degrees in Death Valley, you're gonna lose a lot of electrolytes, and that's gonna make you feeling bad. I remember the first year I was up here, I used to get these crazy headaches or these crazy muscle cramps, and I thought, well, it's just the elevation. But it turns out it's actually just my hydration. You know, I wasn't getting enough potassium, sodium, magnesium, basically everything that's in Element. These are easy to use, they have everything you need and basically nothing you don't. And there's no added sugars, anything like that, and they've just been a game changer for me up at Cerro Gordo. If you're interested in trying them, Element's gonna give an 8 sample pack for free with any purchase. It's an amazing way to try every flavor. You know, this was my favorite, the citrus salt, but all the flavors are great. All you have to go do is drink Element, so drinklmnt.com/Brent, and they'll give that away. Again, this thing has been a huge game changer for me up here. I hope you check them out. Adventures! That has been another very big part of this last month or so. I gotta say, adventures are kind of like going to the gym. You know, whenever I feel like I don't have the time to do that, you know, not this month, that's exactly the time probably when I should go. I always come back feeling more inspired, more connected to the work that I'm doing here at Cerro Gordo. You know, there's a few mining camps out in Death Valley, all of which used to be important in their own way, all of which had their own sets of characters. And I just love going out there and just kind of thinking about why do some of these stories remain generation after generation? You know, why do some of them get told over and over? Why do some of these towns persist year after year? Why do some fade away? All right, so I am off on an inspiration field trip, and I'm going to 2 towns. I'm going to Skidoo is the first, and Skidoo was established around 1907, and they were primarily mining gold out there. They pulled about 75,000 ounces of gold out of the ground, which in today's money would be $150 million, something around that. The town lasted for about 10 or 11 years to about 1916, 1917. There was talk at one point in time bringing a road from Skidoo to Keeler. The residents actually voted on that and wanted to do it. Never happened from my reading, but it's an interesting town. There's a stamp mill. There's about 700 residents at its peak, and I can't wait to check it out. The stamp mill is left. The mine's obviously still there, but any remnants of all of the events that happened there are gone. You know, it's kind of a reminder to me what could happen to Cerro Gordo without the right amount of care. It could just turn back into dust and these stories are forgotten forever. Beyond that, there's another town called Harrisburg. And again, not too much left of that town, a lot of interesting history. So we go out there, check it out, reflect a little bit about everything that's going on with Cerro Gordo, and hopefully draw some inspiration from these mining camps. So this is it. This is what is left of downtown Skidoo. And originally it was called 23 Skidoo, which is kind of meaning of, you know, get lost, scram, skedaddle. As you can tell, there's essentially nothing left. You know, there's not even really remnants on the ground. For the most part, you would never be able to tell that there's any establishment here of any type. Important people with important plans came out here and they set off to accomplish their plans, you know, and they lived and died and probably fought and went through all this stress. And now we go out here and essentially nothing is left. And it just, to me, is a reminder of kind of that ephemeral nature of life, and both how important everything is and also how insignificant some of it can be in the long run. And it's kind of up to you to determine what that's going to be. So another thing that happened here in Skidoo is just one of the most haunted stories I've ever heard. Because back in 1908, a guy named Joseph Simpson was hung right here in the streets from a telephone pole. A few days prior, he had shot and murdered a guy named James Arnold right in the street. Arnold was credited as the founder of Skidoo, and Simpson was a saloon owner here. And apparently Simpson, outside of owning his bar, loved to go to the red light district. He contracted syphilis, and he was treated by a guy named Reginald McDonald. Simpson gets in an argument with Arnold, shoots and kills Arnold. The townspeople were in an uproar. They put him in a corner. The next morning, they're like, you know what? We need to hang this guy. They bury him short after, and that could have been the end of it. But, you know, the press comes flocking here to Skidoo in the middle of nowhere. They're asking about this whole event. And so McDonald, this is the doctor that treated Simpson for syphilis, re-digs up Simpson's body, re-hangs him from the telephone pole for two reasons. Apparently, one, to satisfy the press to give them the photos of this dead body that they wanted, and then two, to study the long-term effects of syphilis on the human body. So McDonald takes him back to his office, does an autopsy. He then takes Simpson's head, he boils it in water, taking down just the skull, and McDonald used this as kind of a souvenir for a while. And even today, it's in a private ownership, which is just insane. It's a very creepy story, and it's one of the more gnarly ones I've heard of any mining camp out here. And it's just something to talk about when out in this remote part of the world. So after my time in the town core, I made my way out to the stamp mill. And the stamp mill is the reason to go to Skidoo. It's beautiful, it's stunning right on a cliff, and it just makes you appreciate the determination of the people that put it there. So there it is, the Skidoo mill. And this was, from my understanding, the only water-powered mill in Death Valley. And it has a 25 stamp mill, which the stamps are to crush up the ore. And it's just stunning. I mean, look at the setting that this piece of machinery is in. Imagine piping in water 25 miles to here. I mean, this is just a beautiful structure. And it's built literally on the side of a cliff. There you can see part of the 15 or 20 mile water line they had to bring into here. It's just incredible. And later, the splitting of that pipe would be a big dagger in the health of this whole mine. Cerro Gordo, for instance, never had a stamp mill. This wasn't the type of ore that they did. You know, they weren't needing to crush it in that way. And so for me to be able to see some of these stamp mills is always so cool. So up here, this is the stamps themselves. So this is where these stamps go up and down, crushing the ore. And then we go onto this pan. There have been cyanide and mercury involved in order to distill it into what they need it to be. And this is Union Ironworks. And you see Union Ironworks on just tons of different things in the desert, from the tramways, you know, that I walk, to everything else. And this one says Joshua Hendy Ironworks, which again, I see a lot in the desert. And so again, this would have been crushing the stuff being flown through, down. Not a bad view for a day's work out here, huh? We're up here above the stamps themselves. You see the ore chute still would have fed through. These would have crushed them up. These would have been spinning. And you can already see, this isn't going to be here for that much longer. The wood's deteriorating, it's breaking. The steel will be here for a long time, but this structure as we know it won't be here for that long. And that's the case with most of these mining camps. And it just reminds me of the importance of preservation, of trying to keep these things around at Cerro Gordo so people can learn from them, be inspired by them, and understand where we were coming from. I think that with all the stories that come with places like this, we're all looking for something different. At some point in our lives, we may be looking for inspiration. In others, we may be looking for a warning. In some, we may be looking for, perseverance. And maybe other times we're looking for somebody that moved on to something better. And I think that whenever I go to a place like this, the more I can understand the stories in the past, the more they just help with whatever I'm going through at that point in my life. And so I think I'm gonna sit here for a little bit longer, just take it all in, think it through. But I'm also gonna try to hit one more place today. There's a place called Harrisburg. It's not too far from here. It too has some very interesting backstory, some interesting characters involved. So I think after a little minute, I'm gonna pack up and head over there. And we'll continue this trek of the ghost towns out here in Death Valley. All right, and now we are approaching another former mining town, another gold mining town. And this one most often is referred to as Harrisburg, but for a while it was called Harrisberry. And that's because the two guys that found this claim were named Shorty Harris and a guy named Pete Agwarberry. And the story goes that Shorty Harris was quite the talker, and he went back and kept calling this Harrisburg, after himself. And then Pete was like, no, that's not how it goes. Call it something else. And what we're seeing here is actually Pete's home. He actually mined this claim for about 40 years, from about 1905 to about 1950. Here's a little placard about it. Let's go read about it. So this is the Agwarberry camp, and this is a short-lived mining boom town. They said that this blew up. I read that there was about 300 people at one point in time that lived in this area that was called Harrisburg. You can see a car up there that Pete used to drive around. This was his home. Again, this was his everything. And it's interesting, the more time you spend out here, you learn about these characters like Pete or Shorty Harris or Burrow Schmidt or Scotty from Scotty's Castle. And they all seem so driven, but beyond driven, something else sends a person to live out here, literally in the middle of nowhere, for 40 years mining. We got the logbook. People haven't been out here in a while. Sign that later. That's really nice of the Park Services to leave that. I imagine this might have been where Pete spent his time living, thinking, working, dreaming. Pretty good little compound he had here. 40 years. It's a long time. All right, we're gonna go over to see Pete's car. I think that, with all of these stories, all of these prospectors are searching for something, And I think for me, Burrow Schmidt, the guy who burrowed through a mountain over 40 years, just proved that some people might pass off as a folly or a waste of time. It wasn't a waste of time. It's still inspiring people today. And this guy Pete out here, he's another guy that's spent 40 years. He didn't necessarily burrow through a tunnel, but there's something about his story that draws me to it, that draws others to it. And I think we're just looking for something to hold on to, something to inspire us, something to warn us, something to inform us, something that just rises out of the pages and becomes real. I think that studying history makes our world interesting, it provides context. It's just a great reason to get out and see beautiful things like this. So let's go see his car before it gets dark. There's Pete's car. Pretty sweet. I think that's just about gonna do it. Thanks, Shorty. Thanks, Pete, for your inspiration, your stories, the legacy that lives on. With that, I think it's time to crawl back to my own mining town that I might be at for the next 40 years. Keep working on my dreams too. So let's get in, get back home.
After Skidoo and after Harrisburg, I got a message from my friend Tim. And Tim is my friend that's just always down for an adventure. You know, I have gone on some of the craziest dirt bike rides in my life with Tim. I've been on some of the craziest mine explorations, some of the most dangerous hikes I've ever done. You know, I feel like I've come closer to dying with Tim than anybody else that I've ever encountered. But I think we've also saved some people along the way. So I think it balances out. It's a flip of the coin anytime we go out somewhere. All right, Tim and I are gonna go try to find an old abandoned mining camp, a mine shaft, hopefully go down into the mine, explore around a little bit, see some history, have some fun, and hopefully avoiding this heat because it is going to be hot out there in the desert. Tim had been out to this mine a couple years ago, and he described this mine as a collection of buildings with a very cool mine shaft underneath one of the buildings that was a hike up a wash to get to. And so early in the morning, I met up with Tim. We jumped into his new Jeep. He's got a new Jeep with outdoors on it. Just a very cool way to explore Death Valley. You know, it was one of these days where I knew it was gonna be about cell service for the majority of the day. There's this comfort that, hey, you know, this is important too. You know, taking time to explore, to go out and check out these things. This is gonna be important. It's gonna make your job back here at Cerro Gordo even better. It's gonna make you rejuvenated. And that was that.
It's up there's where we're headed. Those buildings.
So, as we got out there, it was cool because we're getting back to the area where I did the salt tramp hike, where I hiked a beverage and all these things. And I think anytime before I go on an adventure, just the anticipation builds and I just get so excited about discovering the unknown.
So underneath this house, there is a giant hole. So just threw a piece of timber down this hole and it fell for over 20 seconds, like 25 seconds or so. So this is a very deep hole, but it's confusing because it just seems to be a solid dirt shaft that has a building built on top of it. There's a floor that's sagging. So I almost wonder if this building was built after that was done, because you wouldn't be working it, especially that big a thing, from with this building in the way. Let's throw this can.
We threw a can down and it traveled for a very unsettling amount of time, probably over 20 seconds. And with that, we decided we're gonna go down there.
What you doing, buddy?
Doing something really scary, it seems.
I've looked at the like Mindat and stuff like that online, and they don't say anything about the workings here. Unspecified underground surface openings.
First, let's take a little peek.
The can that we threw down there seemed to travel for almost 20 seconds without hitting anything. So we tied our light to the end of the rope, and we slowly lowered down the 300 feet of rope that we had. And the light, while going down, we didn't see any levels off of the mine, and we didn't see anything below the light as it was just dangling there, freely floating.
See the light down there?
Yeah.
It's dangling, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's f***ed up. Doesn't look like there's any levels or anything.
We brought 300 feet of rope, which if you're going out into the desert, you anticipate there's not gonna be too many mine shafts over 300 feet. So I dropped out another rock, and I remember distinctly seeing the rock zoom by that light 300 feet down and just keep going for a very unsettling amount of time before it hit the bottom. So that would indicate, one, that 300 feet is not nearly enough rope, and two, there's no levels in between here and there. So really it seemed that descending down the rope was going to be a good workout, but there wasn't gonna be a lot beyond that. We were gonna have to bring back more rope.
What's your initial impression after looking down there?
It's kind of scary, actually. There's nothing, like no sides, you can't see the bottom, and it's all sediment layers, so
That's terrifying.
it's not hard rock.
Right, so it's falling in too.
Yeah.
Sick.
All right, we're out of there. Maybe to come back, try to determine how deep that shaft is, maybe rig something with some cameras or some lights so we can get an idea of how much rope we're gonna need to go all the way to the bottom. But for now,
we're hiking back out of here.
I just didn't go because I chickened out.
since we're already out there, I thought, hey, we need to go to a warm springs. Now this warm springs I had heard about for years, and I've never been to. It's about 50 miles from any paved road. The road to get there is very difficult. It's very taxing on vehicles. But I'd heard it's just this oasis in the desert. All right, we are out here in Saline Valley. We are headed to the Warm Springs.
Springs is a few miles that way. You can see the trees. It's 112 degrees out here, so it's hot. This is some classic desert art for you. Steel welded together with some chain, and we're just missing some bottle art, and then we'd have everything that the desert would need.
So we set off, we made our way there, and it's just stunning. There is beautiful green grass just surrounded by moon surface is what it looks like, just unvegetated desert, and suddenly you just have this pocket of beautiful trees, of water, and of grass. And apparently the story there is that there's 3 thermal springs that are naturally occurring that are feeding these pools. And in the 50s, you know, a bunch of people went out there, started to develop it more for recreation. So they put in some concrete pools that are fed by the springs. They planted some palm trees, they planted grass, they brought fish out there. All of these things just to make it this Shangri-La of sorts. And so these days, they aren't allowed to plant any more palm trees out there. And the ones that do remain are gonna live there till they die. But it has a couple caretakers. And I gotta say, being out there, the people there are just amazingly kind. They are full of information, and they just have that same passion that I find so often in the desert with people that care about spaces.
What's up, buddy?
What you doing, dude?
So that was the adventures. I'm just back just feeling excited. You know, excited for more adventures. I feel like I have some loose threads I need to pull on some more. And it's just one of those reminders again that whenever I feel like, hey, I'm just too busy, are the times I do need to go out there and do these types of explorations. I always get inspired. I always come back thinking about the characters I've learned about. And I just think that it's prompted me to do all sorts of big adventures over the next couple months. Ones that are gonna just carry forward this enthusiasm, this excitement, and just, I think, lead to some pretty amazing things around here. This past month, I've been thinking a lot about that desire or obsession almost for uncovering stories of the past. You know, what is it within me that makes me have to understand all of these obscure stories about Cerro Gordo or the mining camps of Death Valley? You know, why do I need to know exactly who it was that left their name in carbide 900 feet down the Union Mine? You know, or who was the last person that had the cabin on the cliff over here? Or who are those 2 bodies that are buried next to the writer's cabin on the backside of the property? You know, what is it that pulls into that history? And the more I sat with it, I think it stems from a human desire to be connected to the human experience, you know, to understand the past, feel connected to the future, but also just to fulfill this obligation of sorts of honoring the past. You know, I think to remember is to revive. To remember is to revive. To remember is potentially one of the most beautiful things you can do for any soul. Because I think at some level, no matter how small, we all want to be remembered. You know, whether it's to feel less alone in the world, you know, to feel like our work is worth something, to pass on lessons that we hard earned to future generations. We all have some desire to be remembered. I think that's why the miners leave their names 900 feet down in the mine, or why there's petroglyphs behind me that are thousands of years old. You know, it's a very instinctual desire. And I think by remembering these people, by digging into these stories, it fills us with joy because we're almost paying it forward. By digging up their stories and honoring them,
I think we're almost hoping at some level that future generations will do the same for us. You know, that our stories will matter after our time. And I think there's this beautiful connection that exists, even if it's below the surface, you don't realize it. But I think that is what's happening. And in this month, I just been filled with joy while I was out there discovering all these stories. I think for that reason. I think a big part of that is being able to share it here on the channel. So I just want to say thank you guys so much for giving me a platform to share these stories, to allow to be tapped into that connection, you know, to find that joy of discovering these stories of the past. I just want to say thank you guys. These past 3 years have brought so much joy into my life, in no small part because of this channel. So everybody watching has played a part in that. Everybody part of that has created that connection that I'm talking about. So I just want to say that this week. I'm going to sign out and watch the sunset. But I wish you guys the best. Thank you guys so much. I hope you get out there. I hope you do uncover a little bit of history and storytelling in your past. I hope you remember somebody. It's a beautiful thing. And I hope I see you guys next time on this channel as we continue uncovering the past and remembering different things.